Good morning. Today we're covering the second part and the last part of the book of Daniel. We're on we're on chapter 9. We had been using this chart of the book of Daniel, and we had gotten up to chapter 8. So the book of Daniel, as you can see in this chart, repeats the same theme over and over again about the coming kingdoms coming at the time of Daniel. Daniel is one of the last books in the prophets, and so God, instead of giving details like He does in Chronicles and Kings and those books, He gives a broad picture of what's going to happen in the future when there's no prophecy for hundreds of years. So He covers in big strokes the coming four kingdoms: Babylon, which was current during the time of Daniel, and then Media Persia, which was also came into worldwide dominance during the time of Daniel, and then Greece, which did not come into dominance until after Daniel. We're talking about the Persian Daniel now, and Rome, which came much later than Daniel. So this is all prophecy. But in the last days, there's a time of 10 kings, and there's the 10 kings are led by this little horn, this anti-Messiah, this man of who speaks great things and knows mysteries. And then Messiah, God's champion, sets up the Messianic Kingdom. So this is all repeated over and over again in Daniel. The first of all, in Daniel 2, it was covered by the image of gold, silver, brass, and iron, which was Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. And then in Daniel 7, it was covered by four beasts: a lion, a bear, a leopard, and a mixed beast, which represented the same four kingdoms that were coming: Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. And then in Daniel 8, Babylon is not covered, but by this time, that's already been taken over by Persia. But Persia and Greece are covered, and then Rome is not given much stage here, but he goes on to speak about this little horn that grows into a great horn, and then, of course, Messiah. And then we'll see in chapter 9 the same thing. We'll be covering the same periods of time, and then in chapters 11 and 12, the same things, talking about four kings for Persia and a mighty king, Alexander the Great, for Greece, and then a king of the north, referring to Rome, and a king of the north, later referring to the man, the little horn, the anti-Messiah, and then the kingdom. So Daniel repeats these things chapter after chapter with different visions, so that we can know for certain so they could know for certain what was coming, and so we can know for certain what is coming in these last periods. Just like these prophecies came true for Persia and Greece and Rome, they'll also come true for the 10 kings and the man of sin and the Messiah, God's champion, and the Messianic Kingdom. So this is definitely relevant to us today. Israel's been restored to its land, and the nations of the world are becoming anti-Semitic and ready for this little horn to take over and to oppose Israel, and then for the Messiah to come in the nick of time to save the day and save Israel and to set up the Messianic Kingdom. So we're ready to look at Daniel 8. First of all, there's a reference to the Babylonian captivity in Daniel 8. I'm sorry. Okay, so we covered Daniel 8 already. We're actually ready to do Daniel 9. But so in Daniel 9, there's a reference to the Babylonian captivity. So I just want to give some background on that. In Leviticus 25, 1-4, God had talked about how he would send the children of Israel. Well, God had commanded Israel in Leviticus 25, 1-4, God had commanded Israel to not only have a Sabbath every week, but have a Sabbath of years also. So he said, "Speak unto the children of Israel and say unto them, when you come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto Jehovah. 6 years shalt thou sow thy field, and 6 years thou shalt prune thy vineyard, and gather in the fruits thereof. But in the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of solemn rest for the land, a Sabbath unto Jehovah. Thou shalt neither sow thy field nor prune thy vineyard." So they had to trust the Lord that there'd be enough crops in the 6th year to carry them through the 7th year and still have enough planting to plant to begin the 8th year. And in addition to every 7 years having a Sabbath, there was one called a Jubilee after every 49 years on the 50th year. In Leviticus 25, 8-54, "And thou shalt number 7 Sabbaths of years unto thee, 7 times 7 years, even 49 years. Thou shalt send abroad the loud trumpet on the 10th day of the 7th month. In the day of atonement shall ye send abroad the trumpet throughout all your land, and ye shall hallow the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and ye shall return every man unto his possession." So if you sold yourself into slavery, you got to go free at that year and return to your possession. If you sold your possession, you got your possession back, your land. "Ye shall not sow, neither reap that which groweth of itself in it. According to the number of years after the Jubilee, thou shalt buy of thy neighbor, and according unto the number of years of the crops he shall sell unto thee." So you knew if you bought a piece of land 10 years before the Jubilee, you were really just leasing it for 10 years. So you made the price accordingly. "I will command my blessing upon you in the 6th year, and it shall bring forth fruit for 3 years." Usually the 6th year would bring forth fruit for 2 years, but here it brought forth fruit for 3 years, since the 49th would be a Sabbath year, and then the 50th year would be another Sabbath year. "And the land shall not be sold in perpetuity forever. In all the land of your possession you shall grant a redemption for the land. And if thy brother be waxed poor with thee, and shall sell himself unto thee, if he be not redeemed before the year of the Jubilee, then he shall go out in the year of the Jubilee." But he says, "If thou wilt not hearken unto me," in Leviticus 26, "you will I scatter among the nations, and I will draw out the sword after you, and your land shall be a desolation, and your cities shall be a waste. Then shall the land enjoy its Sabbaths." as long as it lieth desolate, and ye are in your enemy's land, even then shall the land rest and enjoy its Sabbaths. So Israel uh, didn't keep the the Sabbath years, and so God took them away out of the land to let the land have its Sabbaths. Um, Jeremiah prophesied a 70-year captivity based upon this. Jeremiah 25, 1 to 11. And this whole land shall be a desolation and an astonishment. These nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. 70 years to allow the time that they had not kept the Sabbaths. So this was fulfilled in 2 Chronicles 36:20 and Ezra 1:3. And them that had escaped from the sword carried he away to Babylon, and they were servants to him and his sons until the reign of the kingdom of Persia, to fulfill the word of Jehovah by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed its Sabbaths. For as long as it lay desolate, it kept Sabbath to fulfill 70 years. So the amount of time that Israel did not keep the year and Sabbath of years, God left Israel in Babylon until the land had fulfilled its Sabbaths. Now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of Jehovah by the mouth of Jeremiah might be accomplished, Jehovah stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, so that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and put it also in writing, saying, Thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth hath Jehovah, the God of heaven, given me, and he hath charged me to build him a house, that's the temple, in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Whosoever there is among you of all his people, Jehovah his God be with him, and let him go up. Whosoever there is among you of all his people, his God be with him, and let him go up into Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and build the house of Jehovah, the God of Israel. He is God, which is in Jerusalem. So in 606 BC, the first captives, including Daniel, went to Babylon. And in 586 BC, the first temple was destroyed. So that's the temple that Solomon had built. And then in 538 BC, Cyprus conquered Babylon and issued the decree for the people to return. And Daniel was in Babylon during this time. Daniel was in captivity during this time, so he was there when Babylon was reigning, and he was there when Persia took over, and he would and so he was there when Cyrus conquered Babylon. Isaiah had prophesied about Cyrus by name before Cyrus was even a king. In Isaiah 44:24, the Bible says, Thus saith Jehovah regarding Cyrus, He is my shepherd and shall perform all my pleasure, even saying of Jerusalem, she shall be built, and of the temple, thy foundation shall be laid. Thus saith Jehovah to his anointed, to Cyrus. Anointed is the same word as Messiah. But here he's anointed to do a certain task. Messiah is anointed and chosen to do other tasks. So he says to his anointed to do this particular task, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations before him, to open doors before him, and the gates shall not be shut, that thou mayest know that it is I, Jehovah, who call thee by name, by thy name, before he was even king, before he was even in a position to do this, even the God of Israel. For Jacob my servant's sake, and Israel my chosen, I have called thee by thy name. I have surnamed thee, though thou hast not known me. I am Jehovah, and there is none else beside me. Besides me, there is no God. And so, of course, that's what happened. Um, Babylon did fall to Cyrus, um, also known as Darius the Persian. Um, and in Daniel 5:4, we heard about that in the book of Daniel. Belshazzar the king made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords and drank wine before the 1,000. In the same hour came forth the fingers of a man's hand and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. Then was Daniel brought in and said before the king, "This is the writing that was inscribed, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Mene, God hath numbered thy kingdom and brought it to an end. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and found wanting. Peres, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. In that night, Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, was slain, and Darius the Mede, which is Cyrus, received the kingdom, being about 62 years old." So here's a picture of the city of Babylon at that time, and it was very well fortified, impossible to take. But what happened is, according to Wikipedia, the famed walls of Babylon were indeed impenetrable, with the only way into the city through one of its many gates, or through the Euphrates, which ebbed beneath its thick walls. Metal gates at the river's inflow and outflow prevented underwater intruders, if one could hold one's breath to reach them. Cyrus diverted the Euphrates River upstream into a basin created by Queen Nitocris, which is one of the Babylonian queens, causing the Euphrates to drop. That's not why she made the basin, but it was useful to Cyrus. The Persian army conquered the outlying areas of the city's interior, while a majority of Babylons at the city center were oblivious to the breach. So this is how God enabled Cyrus to take the city, so that he could then let the people go back to Jerusalem. So in Daniel 9, 1-2, Daniel talks about the 77s. In the first year of Darius of the Medes, who was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans, I, Daniel, understood by the books the number of the years whereof the word of Jehovah came to Jeremiah the prophet, for the accomplishing of the desolations of Jerusalem, even 70 years. So Daniel was able to calculate how long Israel had not kept its Sabbaths of years, and then he was able to calculate, divided by 7, and taking account of the Jubilees, how long Israel would be in captivity. So he knew that the time was approaching for Israel to return back to Israel, back to Judah. Then he says in Daniel 9, 3-20, "And while I was confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel," and all Israel and all nations are still in sin and still need to confess. The man Gabriel and so he's an angel, Gabriel, being caused to fly swiftly, said, 77s are decreed upon thy people and upon thy holy city to do all these different things. As far as the 77s, they could be 77s of days, 77s of years. I think you see from what we've looked at already that it's a 77s of years. And so, in other words, 70 times 7, 490 years, or 49 years, 7 sevens of years, 49 years. 7 sevens are 49, but it's not 7 7, it's 77, so it's 490 years. It's divided into different parts, though. One of them is 7 sevens. We'll see in a minute. So back to get that straight again. 77s of years, and 77s are 490 years. So that's the big picture. And all these things are going to happen through that 77s, through that 490 years. First of all, and it's upon thy people, Israel, and upon thy holy city, Jerusalem. And the things that are going to happen is, one, to finish transgression, so to get rid of transgressors, and to make an end of sins, to solve the problem of sin, to make reconciliation for iniquity, again, to solve the problem of man's unrighteousness, and to bring in everlasting righteousness. That would be through the Messianic Kingdom, and to seal up vision and prophecy, to bring everything to conclusion, and to anoint the most holy. Probably that means the most holy place, meaning to reestablish the temple in Jerusalem in a way that it would never be destroyed again. Not the one that was destroyed at the time of Herod. This is still in the future, but we'll look at that. So the first 69 sevens is up until the time of Messiah. It says here in Daniel 9:25, know therefore and discern that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto the anointed one, and that could be also what this is talking about, to anoint the most holy, might be talking about the anointed one, but it could also be talking about the most holy place, being the Holy of Holies in the temple. But the Messiah also is a very unusual person in the Bible, so closely identified with God and different from all other men. Know therefore and discern that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto the anointed one, and this is talking about the Messiah. The word anointed means Mashiach, Messiah. Unto the anointed one, the prince, he's also called the prince, shall be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. So all that's saying is that 490 years that was spoken of up here, 77s, is divided into 2 parts. First, there's 7 sevens, and then there's, which is 49 years, and then there's 62 sevens, 60, and 2 sevens, which is 434 years. So again, the total 9 4 is 13. 480. So we're a little short there. So this 77 is divided into more parts. I should have spelled them out here. Anyway, first of all, let's consider the different possible starting points for the commandment for this 490 years and for this first group of 7 sevens of years, 49 years. There's 5 possible starting points listed here for the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem. There's Isaiah's prophecy in Isaiah 44:24, which, remember, he said about Cyrus. Here back in Isaiah 44, he talked about Cyrus. So that could be the decree. More likely it would be Cyrus's decree when Cyrus said to build Jerusalem. It could be Darius's decree, which came after Cyrus, not Darius the Great, but this Darius. That's recorded in Ezra 6:1-8, or it could be someone that came after those two, Artaxerxes. Had 2 decrees, one when Ezra went back and one when Nehemiah went back. So the first 49 years is to 77s, and it's divided into 7 sevens and 7 to build Jerusalem unto the anointed one. So the first 7 sevens or 49 years is when Jerusalem is rebuilt, from the time the commandment till Jerusalem is rebuilt. And then the second part, 7 is unto the anointed one. So the first 49 years to finish Jerusalem, Cyrus's decree was in 538. The temple foundation was laid in 536. Darius' decree was in 520. And in 515, the temple was completed. Then Ezra and Nehemiah. And then in 444 BC, the walls completed. And also people settling in Jerusalem. So certainly by this time is the 49 years completed. Now there's a problem because with Persian chronology, we have Persian chronology from different sources. It's kind of the weak point in the chronology of all of our histories. A lot of our chronology comes from Greece dates that have been recorded from Olympics and so forth every 4 years. And we got dates out of the Bible. This man lived so long, and then he, begat his son who became king, and then he lived so long before his son became king. So we've got continuous chronology, but the Persian chronology is our weak link. So we have 3 different ones we can choose from that are listed here anyway. We've got the Persian chronology of Ptolemy, and his dating from Cyrus to Alexander the Great is 207 years. And then we've got the Persian chronology of Josephus, and his dating from Cyrus to Darius, the last king here. I'm not sure what the total on that one is. And then the chronology of the Seder Olams, which is one of the books in the Talmud, I believe, lists from Darius the Mede, which would be to Darius, as 52 years. So if you use the Ptolemy decree, if you use Ptolemy's dating, not decree, if you use Ptolemy's dating of these things, then from 538 BC to 490 year, 400 and all right, it's a little. We talked about 70 years, but 77s, but it's divided, we said, into 7 sevens and then 62 sevens. But what does that come out to? 7 sevens is 7, 62 plus 7 is 69. So what we're really dealing with here is the first 69 sevens is divided into 2 parts. The first 7 was 49 years to build Jerusalem. Then the 60 and 2 sevens goes from Jerusalem to Messiah. And then there's 1/7 left over. That's a key point. So this is just to get to Messiah. And using Ptolemy's dating of the Persian kings, you end up with 55 BC, about 55 BC. And using the Seder Olam's dating, you end up about 100 AD, which is why the Jewish people of 132 AD followed let me not have it in here, but followed a false Messiah who lost the land. Though he's considered to be a hero, he actually, Israel had fairly good relationships with Rome at that time, from some perspectives, or from others they didn't. But in either case, by causing a revolution in 132 AD that had no chance of success, everything was lost and the people were dispersed. Some say that the Roman emperors were even willing to let Israel rebuild the temple at that time, but by this revolt, everything was lost. The people were destroyed, killed, and dispersed. And this may have been one of the reasons that they followed this man who claimed to be the Messiah. Even on his coins, he had references to a star, like the star rising out of Jacob, Bar Kokhba. So, though he's considered a hero because he fought for Israel, which is a good thing, really, if it wasn't for him, Israel might not have been cast out of the land for those thousands of years. They wouldn't have suffered the total destruction that they did because they followed a false Messiah. And he didn't himself claim to be Messiah, but he didn't deny it either. And there were a lot of people that followed him as Messiah. And part of this has to do with its dating, whether it was chosen to match up with his date to support him, or whether this dating helped cause people to mistakenly follow him as Messiah. In any case, the Seder Olam had the date for Messiah coming much later than the other dating. So the weak point is knowing exactly when the decree started, and also knowing what the chronology of the Persian kings are, because we have some weakness there, and that's chronology is not in the Bible. The only thing we know for sure is that the temple, Solomon's temple, which Herod had refurbished but not really made a new temple. He did it little by little, replaced things. But that temple of Solomon would be, I'm sorry, not the temple of Solomon, the temple that was rebuilt by the people who returned once Jerusalem was rebuilt. That temple would be destroyed after Messiah had arrived, because it says here, after 62 sevens shall the anointed be cut off. So that's Messiah dying. The anointed being the same word as Mashiach. And remember, we had our sevens. I keep saying this over and over again because I kind of stumbled around with it earlier, and also because, it's important that 77s are decreed, but it's divided into actually three parts. The first 7 sevens, 49 years, just gets you to the building of Jerusalem. And then from the building of Jerusalem, the second piece of the 77s is 62, which is 434 years. That gets you to Messiah. So if you know when the temple was rebuilt, not the temple rebuilt, but Jerusalem rebuilt, and if you go 434 years into the future, that's when Messiah arrives. He has to have arrived because he can't be cut off until he arrives. So he arrives and he's killed. um, and he shall have nothing. And then after that, the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city, Jerusalem, and the sanctuary, the temple. So this happened in 72 AD, or is it 70 AD? Sorry, um, 70 AD. So let's just be sure. 70 AD. Okay. So I don't know why I got the 72. Maybe it was because of the 132 AD for the Bar Kokhba rebellion. But in 70 AD, the temple is destroyed. And but by that time, the Messiah has already been cut off. The anointed one has been cut off. That's what the significance of the 70 is. Why did God break it into different parts like that? Why did he divide the 490 years into three parts? Well, the first one was the rebuilding of Jerusalem. The second one is to know when the Messiah will be cut off. He's cut off after the 7. That's the second one. That's the importance of it. And then sometime after that, actually not even as part of the 490 years, actually, when the Messiah is cut off, that suspends the 490 year calculations, because in between the Messiah being cut off and the last 7, which we'll see down here, these other things happen. I'm sorry. So I didn't have any time to go over this before before this morning, but let's go over it again. The 62 sevens, the 434 years, is actually unto the coming of Messiah. So from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto the anointed one, the prince, shall be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. So the 434 years after the rebuilding of Jerusalem is unto the coming of the anointed one. Once Messiah comes, then sometime after that, after the 62 sevens, during the period after the 62 sevens, is when all these things happen. The anointed one is cut off. The people of the prince that shall come destroy the city and the sanctuary. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. So what does this mean, the people of the prince that shall come? Well, the prince that shall come is referring to this little horn that we looked at. Here we have the same thing. We have the command to rebuild Jerusalem. We have the 49 years to get Jerusalem rebuilt after the command to restore Jerusalem. And then from the time that Jerusalem is rebuilt to Messiah is an additional 434 years, the coming of Messiah. And sometime after the coming of Messiah, Messiah is killed and the temple is destroyed. And then this one, the little horn, makes a covenant for 1 week with many. 1 week is our missing week, the last week. So these events take place in between the 69th week and the 70th week. So the prince that shall come is that little horn, the one that speaks with the mouth, speaking great things. And the one knowing mysteries that we saw in our last time with Daniel, the first part of this Daniel survey. So the prince that shall come is that small horn, but it's not him that destroys the temple. It's the people of the prince that shall come. Well, the prince that shall come is from Rome. He's from the last kingdom that's listed in our list here. We've got Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. And then this person, actually, it's the other way around to figure it out. So we don't know for sure that the prince that shall come is from Rome until we look at it this way. The people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Well, who destroyed Jerusalem, the city, and who destroyed the temple? Well, it was the Romans. So the prince that shall come, we know, therefore, is going to be from the Romans. And the people of the prince that shall come is the Romans. And that's what happened in 70 AD. And then he skips to the very end, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, even until the end shall be war, desolations, and desolations are determined. So skipping to, that's in Daniel 9:26. So when you get to this second half of the verse here, now you're in a time that's even future to us, because that's continued here in Daniel 9:27. And he, the prince that shall come, the little horn, shall make a firm covenant with many for 1 7. That's our last 7. And we haven't started that 7 yet. That 7 doesn't start until this exact moment when he makes a covenant with many for 1 7. And in the midst of the 7, 3.5 years into his treaty, he shall cause the sacrifice, because the temple will have been rebuilt, not the temple spoken about here, to anoint the most holy, if that's talking about the most holy place, not that temple, but the temple that doesn't exist right now. A temple will be rebuilt, and it will have sacrifices restored. But in the midst of this treaty of 7 years, he'll cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And upon the wing of abominations shall come one that maketh desolate. So the abomination is going to be an image put up in the most holy place in the temple. We can see that from other verses, but this abomination makes Israel desolate, and because their temple will be made unclean, and even unto the full end, and that determined, shall wrath be poured out upon the desolate. So unfortunately, there's a time of Jacob's trouble coming. We've talked about the day of the Lord, and before the Messianic Kingdom is set up. And during that time, wrath shall be poured out upon the desolate. We talked about the 2 regatherings of Israel. The first regathering, which began, which we're in now, is a gathering, unfortunately, in preparation for judgment, and it's only partial. And then in the future is the second and last regathering of Israel after this day of the Lord, after the time of Jacob's trouble, which will be a regathering, a complete and total regathering in preparation for the Messianic Kingdom. But this, unfortunately, the regathering that we have now is going to be subject to Zechariah 14, where God will gather all nations against Jerusalem, and the city will fall, and then God will come forth himself to fight against those nations like he did in the past. So, and again, in the person of Messiah, because that's when the Messiah will save the day. So let's look at this next section and this last section on Daniel, which is so first of all, in Daniel 10, it's just a vision of Daniel seeing the angel, or the angel of the Lord. And then in Daniel 11 and 12, we have this four kings speaking about Persia, and then the mighty king Alexander the Great, and so forth, until we get to the little horn king, and then the Messianic Kingdom. So let's look at the mighty king, which is Alexander the Great, after four kings. Daniel 11:2, behold, there shall stand up yet three kings in Persia, and the fourth shall be far richer than they all. So that's Darius the Great, not Cyrus. And when he is waxed strong through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Greece. So the wars between Persia and Greece were prophesied here. So the first four kings of Persia were Cyrus, which is also known as Darius the Mede, and then Cambyses, and then Bardia, and then Darius the First, which is also known as Darius the Great. According to Wikipedia, the first Persian invasion of Greece during the Persian Wars began in 492 BC and ended with a decisive Athenian victory at the Battle of Marathon in 490 BC. The invasion, consisting of two distinct campaigns, was ordered by the Persian king Darius I. So when Daniel speaks about there shall stand up yet three kings in Persia, and the fourth shall be far richer than they all, and he shall stir up all against the realm of Greece, that's Darius the Great, who invaded Greece but was defeated by the Athenian victory at the Battle of Marathon. Of course, that's all future to Daniel. That's why this is prophecy. God that can create the world can certainly tell us what's going to happen in the future. That's Daniel 11:2. In Daniel, it must supposed to be 10:2. Yeah, 10:2. And in Daniel 10:3, a mighty king shall stand up that shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken and shall be divided toward the four winds of heaven, but not to his posterity. So the mighty king is Alexander the Great, ruling with great dominion, doing according to his will. But his kingdom, as soon as he stands up, his kingdom is broken. Alexander the Great didn't last too long, as we saw in our last study about Daniel. He came swiftly, but he died young in Babylon. And his kingdom was divided into four. We saw the four generals that survived the battle of the generals, and to form lasting domains. And so it wasn't his posterity that that inherited Alexander's kingdom. It wasn't his sons, but it was his generals, some of his generals, and not according to the dominion wherewith he ruled. They were much weaker than Alexander was in his kingdom. And his kingdom shall be plucked up even for others besides thee. So it was kind of a messy time. Now we'll skip verses 5 to 29 so we can get to through this in a timely manner. So in Daniel 10:30, we're talking about, again, this abomination of desolation, which was mentioned a few minutes ago. And speaking of the little horn, the anti-Messiah, Satan's champion, he shall have indignation against the holy covenant. So that's this. We had the four kings of Persia, the last one being Darius the Great, who got into a war with Greece. Then we have the mighty king, which is Alexander the Great, which is the here's Alexander the Great's four generals that ended up with the land, with the kingdoms. So we have the mighty king, Alexander the Great, representing Greece. We have the king of the north in verses 14 to 35, and we skipped that because we wanted to get to this king of the north in verses 30 to 39, speaking of the little horn. So we're right here. So that king, he shall have indignation against the holy covenant. So he's upset at he's king over all the world, but he can't get the Jewish people to obey him and forsake God and forsake the covenant. He shall have indignation against the holy covenant, and shall do his pleasure, and have regard unto them that forsake the holy covenant. So Israel will not be unified. There will be groups that want to just fit in with this world and forsake the holy covenant, and those that try to keep the holy covenant. And forces shall stand on his part, and they shall profane the sanctuary. This is 3.5 years into his treaty that he makes with Israel. He'll make that treaty for their safety. They'll make that treaty for their safety. I think when we talked about maybe when we talked about the regathering of Israel, we might have talked about that treaty and how, is that in this section? Yeah, it's here. We'll look more at that treaty. They shall profane the sanctuary, even the fortress, so even the temple, and take away the continual burnt offering, and they shall set up the abomination that maketh desolate. So that's why we know that this is an image that's set up in the temple, because it's set up. And at that time, there'll be, as I said, it won't be a unified Israel. There'll be two different groups in Israel. Hard to imagine that Israel won't be, politicians won't be unified. So there's two groups in Israel in Daniel 10:32. And such as do wickedly against the covenant shall he pervert by flatteries. So the groups that are non-Orthodox, probably, those that are against the covenant, the secular Jewish people, he'll pervert by flatteries. So this is a world leader. We saw from earlier that he was one of 10 horns, but he wiped out 3. And that's why the remaining 7 gave their allegiance to him. And as a world leader, he'll get support from the Jewish people that do wickedly against the covenant. Um, he'll get their support by flatteries. But the people that know their God, so not everybody in Israel knows God, not all people know God, but some people do. The people that know their God shall be strong and do exploits. And they that are wise among the people, so not everybody is wise, not everybody is wise enough to know the Lord, which is certainly the smartest thing to do for your eternal future. They that are wise among the people shall instruct many, yet they shall fall by the sword and by flame, the time of Jacob's trouble, and by captivity and by spoil many days. So God allows his people, the people that know him, the people that are wise, to suffer these things. Now, when they shall fall, they shall be helped with a little help, but many shall join themselves unto them with flatteries. And some of them that are wise shall fall, to refine them, and to purify, and to make them white, even till the end of time. So why does God allow this suffering and the people that know him to fall? Because the ones that are left are refined, um, and even the ones that suffer death for him are refined and have a better future, a better resurrection. But they're allowed to fall um, until the end of time, because it is yet for the time appointed. So it's not, he doesn't allow all his people to fall, but he comes, and the Messiah comes and saves those that are left and sets up his kingdom. Now this little horn, how does he behave? The king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods. So he's against religion, but especially against the God of the Jewish people, the God of the Bible. And he shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished. So God allows him to persist for a while. For that which is determined shall be done. This has been determined from long ago. Neither shall he regard the gods of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god. For he shall magnify himself above all. So this is not a humble man. This is the horn with the little horn with the big mouth, with the mouth speaking great things. And he shall enter into the glorious land, Israel, and many countries shall be overthrown. So they won't be able to stand against this world dictator. But these shall be delivered out of his hand, Edom and Moab and the chief children of Ammon. So Jordan will escape his domination. I don't know exactly how that's going to happen, but Israel will be, one part of it, of the people of Israel will be probably in Petra, in the mountains of Edom, protected there against this man, at least for a while. And he shall plant the tents of his palace between the sea and the glorious holy mountain. So he'll be between the Mediterranean Sea and the mount, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him, because you can't really win the war against God, obviously, although it's not obvious to him. And then there's the resurrection. So we're just continuing here. That was chapter 10. So this must be 11. Where's this chapter 12? I'm sorry. This is chapter 12. I'll have to check out these verses, which are in 10 and which are in 11, but now we're in chapter 12. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, who standeth for the children of thy people, meaning Michael, the angel, who has special ministry for Israel. And there shall be a time, because of course there's battles in the unseen world as well as in the world that we see. And there shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. It's a time of Jacob's trouble, as described in other passages. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. So there's a book where people's names are written. And they're people that know God, and they shall be delivered. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake. So there'll be a resurrection. Some to everlasting life, and some to shame and contempt. So this is why our life, how we live, matters. The people that knew the Lord, that God allowed them to fall, they awake to everlasting life. So their death was a temporary state. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense to hold true to God and die for his sake and for righteousness' sake. But because of the resurrection, it makes sense. And they that are wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. So, we try to influence people because we can influence people to the side of righteousness, and then they can be awakened to everlasting life at the resurrection. And the wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, gloriously in new bodies, repaired, immortal, uncorruptible bodies. And they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever. So everybody will shine to a different degree, but that reward is waiting for those who are wise and those who help other people be wise. Now, how long until the end of these wonders? That's in verse 6. I believe we're in chapter 12. How long shall it be to the end of these wonders? In verse 7, it shall be for a time, a times, and a half. So that's a time is 1 year, a times is 2 years, and a half is a half a year. So 2 plus 1 is 3.5. 3.5 because the last 7 of our 490 years is the period of time that this little horn makes a treaty with Israel. And it's in the midst of the 7 years that he breaks the treaty and invades the land and sets up the abomination of desolation in the temple. So the midst of 7 years is 3.5 years. So after 3.5 years, this little horn invades Israel. And for 3.5 years, he dominates over Israel. But it shall be how long to the end? Well, just 3.5 years. When they shall have made an end of breaking in pieces the power of the holy people, that's Israel, and they've totally dominated Israel, and it looks like there's no hope. All these things shall be finished. In Zechariah 14, when Israel surrounded after the city falls, then Messiah's feet stand upon the Mount of Olives. And from the time that the continual burnt offering shall be taken away, in the midst of the 3.5 years of the treaty, and the abomination that maketh desolate is set up, the setting up of the idol in the temple, an idol probably of this false Messiah, this little horn. There shall be 1,290 days, which is more than 3.5, a little bit more than 3.5 years, because it 1,305 and 30 days, 1,290 days. Okay, 1,290 days. $1,290 days divided by 360. So that's a little more, even if we do it the other way, 365 times 3.5, 1,290. So that's a little more than the 3.5 years. But that's how long it is until things are finished. Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,305 and 30 days. Because there's a period of time after Messiah conquers this little horn, for things to be, some things have to happen before the Messianic Kingdom is set up. So blessed is he that waiteth and come to the 1,305 and 30 days, because by that time the Messianic Kingdom is set up. It's a little longer than 3.5 years. After the abomination of desolation that maketh desolate. But he says, but go thy way, Daniel, and for thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot at the end of the days. So this is way in the future for Daniel. It's still in our future, although it's probably very close as the world becomes more and more anti-Semitic, and as Israel is so concerned about their security and safety, and is willing to sacrifice, at one point maybe willing to sacrifice just about anything for their safety. The covenant with death in Isaiah 28:14-22 describes this period of time in Israel when they have to make this choice about accepting this treaty. Wherefore, hear the word of Jehovah, ye scoffers that rule this people that is in Jerusalem. So not very complimentary about the rulers of Israel at that time. Because ye have said, we have made a covenant with death, and with Sheol we are in agreement. So to avoid death, for their protection. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, all the warfare going on in the world, a time of World War III, a time of warfare, it shall not come unto us, for we have made lies our refuge, and under falsehood we have hid ourselves. The lies and falsehood being the promises of this man, this little horn. Therefore, thus saith the Lord Jehovah, behold, I lay in Zion for a foundation, a stone, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone of sure foundation. he that believeth shall not be in haste. Speaking of Messiah and those that trust in him, versus this false Messiah, this little horn. God has the one that believes on God's provision will persevere. And your covenant with death shall be annulled, and your agreement with Sheol shall not stand. And when the overflowing scourge shall pass through, instead of thinking that it won't come unto us, when the overflowing scourge shall pass through, ye shall be trodden down by it. For Jehovah will rise up, that he may do his work, his strange work, and bring to pass his act, his strange act. And that's where his own Jewish people are allowed to be suffer. And according to what we looked at in the section on the two regatherings of Israel, 2/3 of the Jewish people at that time, unfortunately, will perish, and 1/3 will be brought through the fire and refined, and they will call God as their God, and he will call them his people, and the Messianic Kingdom will be set up. So now, therefore, be not scoffers, for a decree of destruction I have heard from the Lord, Jehovah of hosts, upon the whole earth. It's not just Israel that will be suffering during the time, the day of the Lord, but it'll be the whole world. And to survive it, you can't be a scoffer. You have to be humble and rely on the word of the Lord and accept the Lord. This has gone really long, so I don't know if we'll be able to include this. You can read this on your own. In Isaiah 14, he talks about Satan, who used to be among the angels, among the stars of God, having his pride in his heart and wanting to ascend and be like the Most High. And then Ezekiel 28, it's a passage where he speaks of the Prince of Tyre in the first section of Ezekiel 28, and then, which is the human king of Tyre, and then he speaks about the king of Tyre in the second section, which refers to Satan himself, because the human king of Tyre is under the power of as a prince, is under the power of Satan, which is the real king of Tyre. And both share the sin of pride, though. And so, speaking of Satan, he said, you say, I'm a god, I sit in the seat of gods in the midst of the seas. I'm sorry, this is the Prince of Tyre, because it says here, you're a man and not a god. Behold, you're wiser than Daniel. No, not really. He thinks he is. There's no secret hidden from you. Actually, so this Prince of Tyre would actually be the little horn, because of course there was a historical king of Tyre, but this one is speaking of the little horn, because there's no secret that can be hidden from you. We saw last time that the little horn has special understanding of mysteries through the power of Satan. And we'll still say, before him who slays you, I am a god. But the little horn is actually, his power comes from Satan himself, which is the king of Tyre. Full of wisdom and perfect in beauty, you were in Eden, the garden of God. You were the anointed cherub who covers, so he was the highest of the angels. You were on the holy mountain of God. You walked back and forth in the midst of fiery stones. You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created until the day iniquity was found in you, when he said he would ascend up and be like the Most High. We saw in Isaiah 14. But until that point, he was perfect. And by the abundance of your trading, you became filled with violence within, and you sinned. Your heart was lifted up because of your beauty, the most beautiful of all the angels. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. So the little horn follows in the footsteps of his his master, uh, Lucifer, um, the one who was the greatest of all the angels before he fell. So he is Satan's champion. Um, in Daniel 7:7-8, we saw in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man and a mouth speaking pompous words. So that's matches up with Satan's own character. Also in Daniel chapter 8, we saw a male he goat came from the west across the surface of the whole earth without touching the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. The large horn was broken, and in place of it, four notable ones came up toward the winds of heaven. That's Alexander the Great, and divided his kingdom divided to four. And out of one of them came a little horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, toward the glorious land. That's the little horn fighting against um, the nation of Israel, as we saw in Daniel 11 and 12, 10 to 12. Um, and it grew up to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host of the stars to the ground and trampled them. Um, he even exalted himself as high as the prince, as high as the prince of the host. So he exalted himself as high as Messiah, the true Messiah. And by him the daily sacrifices were taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Because of transgression, an army was given over to the horn. Because of the transgression of Israel, God allowed an army to be given over, the armies of the world to be given over to this horn to oppress, to oppose the people, to oppose the daily sacrifices, and to cast truth to the ground. So a very perilous time is coming. He did all this and prospered. So this is more about this man in Daniel 8:5. And then in verse 23 of Daniel 8, in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their fullness, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up, the little horn. His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power, no, because he's only prince to the real king of his power, which is Lucifer himself. He shall destroy fearfully and shall prosper and thrive. He shall destroy the mighty and also the holy people, Israel. And through his cunning he shall cause the Jewish people, and through his cunning he shall cause deceit to prosper under his rule. It'll be time of great deceit. And he shall exalt himself in his heart, and he shall destroy many in their prosperity. He shall even rise against the Prince of Princes, Messiah, but he shall be broken without human means, just like in the first vision. The rock smites the image on the toes, the rock cut out without man's hands, and the stone fills the whole earth and becomes as a representation of the the kingdom of the God of heaven, the Messianic Kingdom. So this says that he will be destroyed without human means. Uh, it'll be the power of God and Messiah that destroys him. Um, so what we saw is that at the end here we have the resurrection and everlasting life for those who are wise, and they'll shine as the firmament, stars of the firmament forever. But we also have, as we saw in I don't have it listed here, but we also have some that will rise to everlasting shame and contempt. So there is a judgment coming, and God gave the timeline up to the coming of Messiah. He gave the timeline up to the um, up to the coming of Messiah, but after the Messiah's coming, the temple is destroyed, and then the Messiah is killed, temple is destroyed, and then there's a one then there's an unknown period of time before this last week begins. We know when it begins as soon as the little horn makes a 7-year treaty with Israel. That's the last week, but we don't know when he's going to make that treaty. We watch current events, and at some point it'll be revealed to the world when he makes that treaty. Israel will make the wrong choice. The leaders of Israel will make the wrong choice and accept his treaty in exchange for their security, and that brings in the wrath of God upon the world, especially upon the holy people. But there'll be many that know the Lord during that time, and again, 1/3 of the people will survive, and be go into the Messianic Kingdom that will be set up at the return of Messiah when he comes to save Israel at that time.